We're back in the vocal booth. I can't spin all the way around because the mic and my knees. So, there has been an ongoing sub-community building, thriving, living within my community here, my 53, 54-ish thousand people who follow Daniel Greene here, and Daniel, and Greene Daniel, because we're all living together, but there's still the vacuuming doesn't get done. And that sub-community has been submitting writing samples for me to review and critique. And I read them yesterday, and I took notes. And today, we're going to critique them together as a whole. It'll be fun. I'm not going to be giving the authors' names for anonymity's sake. Some people stayed anonymous. I didn't want to be inconsistent. So everyone's anonymous. I'll just be reading the name of the story. And I will be giving general advice on things that I saw. And we'll be going into each one here. There is going to be some redundant criticisms, and I will cut down on that as much as possible by having just like a general at the end. Over 50% of you might need to work on this aspect to it. But I also decided if we're going to be doing this, me criticizing a bunch of people online back to back and not doing in-depth, thorough reviews, but more of these, I should retake me saying in-depth, thorough reviews, but I'm not going to. Let's just bull ahead. Instead, I'm just going to be doing these shallower reviews, just kind of getting through them one after another. And if that's the case, I'm basically like a lot of my least favorite reviewers ever, and I might as well impersonate them while doing this. So without any further ado, I need to have a gimmick. Like any successful YouTuber who's shooting for 100,000 subs, I got to have a gimmick. I'm not going to dye my hair, though. I'm sorry. I have a lot of things that are preventing me from doing that, including past experience. So what we're going to do instead is go the easiest route possible. Let's go with a cheap, shallow gimmick. Indoor shades in a vocal booth, not phone booth. That was wrong. All right, jumping into the first one, we have Awakening Silence. I remember this one clearly. It was a straight into the action, just get to it short story, which is a bold way to take it. I personally, when I'm writing a short story, try to avoid action unless the story itself revolves around action. The story here did revolve around action to an extent, but you have to remember when you're limited to 2,000 words, which all these short stories were, because thank you for doing that, KingEditor. I didn't ask you to, but oh my God, I don't know if I could have done this in the first place if everything was like 5,000 words. So that saved me big time. But with so few words allowed, it's a very bold decision to think you can pull off a full-on action sequence and not eat up so much of your time that it's going to completely eat away at any characterization you have. And unfortunately, while the action was well handled here, the end result was that I feel like there was characterization lacking, motivation lacking, and those were things that really you only needed a couple more paragraphs set to the side and you could have established, and I would have enjoyed. But I have here in my notes, you had good atmosphere. I liked that. Your writing style and voice came through well. I feel like you have an established swagger, so to say, as an author, where you're confident enough to put your voice in your writing, and it's not to an extraordinarily detrimental extent, so good on you. And my biggest criticism would be with just one choice you made. Well, you did have a couple technical problems in your writing. That's fine. We don't have professional editors here. I think that it would have helped to go through your story one more time and maybe just cut down on the action a bit and instead more focus on what the characters are doing and why, and set them up as deep people to me, which is extraordinarily hard to do, but there are good examples in this list of people who built some characters in the 2,000 words that stuck with me. I already forgot them all, though. So that was my mini review of Awakening Silence. Now moving on to The Six Echoes, and you are one of the people who included art with your submission. Wow. I immediately in my prose here for you you have some poetic-ass writing at the beginning. Very bold decision for how you decided to write. Very bold decision. I liked it. You had some repetition. It didn't go to the extent that it quite bothered me, although that's going to be a personal preference thing. Some people just get annoyed by repetition so fast, and I don't entirely blame them. Atmosphere, again. This guy built some atmosphere, and I really dug it. But now we're going into the cons, and it got a bit grandiose in the dialogue, which I totally understand what you were going for here. You have this demonic character, and that demonic character was interesting to me. One of the most interesting characters I read that day. But the grandiose, over-the-top, dialogue, I don't know why, and I can't fully say this is a fair criticism, but it did grate on me. After a certain point, I feel like if you're gonna write dialogue like that, you have to do it sparingly, and you have to really think about what's being said and why, because if you don't do it well and it doesn't pay off, it's gonna really hurt to read, and I think you didn't go too deep into that territory. But some of your soldiers did go over the line. Tell me, girl, who is the coward? He who loves life or she who fears death? I like that. That was really reflective of your poetic-ass writing, and good job. I wanted to give you a gold star for that. You got a gold star from me. If you meet me in person, I will have a gold star on my personhood for you whenever that day comes. And now we're moving on to the next one. The Tempest of Teklan. Teklan? You guys did a lot of crazy names, and my dyslexic ass did not love it, because these are not established worlds where I can Google how to pronounce things. Pro, you were ambitious. I'm going to give you that right off the bat, and you were trying really to build something epic. That showed. Though I do have quite a bit of criticisms here, I do want to give you a good, solid thumbs up and tell you I want to see more writing from you. Anyone who's willing to take this big a bite right away gets respect from me. You had some things that just did not make sense in your writing. Like you described the day as very hot, and then said it was perfect for battle. From this one character's perspective. Anyone who's fought in a battle, and I have not, but I've read accounts from many people who have, will tell you a hot day is not optimal for fighting in a battle. You might want to do some research on that, and this is actually a general criticism for a lot of people. You need to do research if you're going to make claims and statements like this, because hot days, you do not want to fight in a hot day. No one wants to fight in a hot day. You want a nice cool, like 50, maybe go up towards the 60s, but not much, because you're going to be a sweaty man. Yeah, there was also another consistency with the battle where there was people beating their shields when you said the enemy was a spear's length away. Another battle tip, if your enemy is within spear distance, you're not going to be beating your shield. That's not going to be what you're doing. No general in the history or captain in the history of warfare has said, okay, everyone, we could kill them right now, but don't and beat your shield. That's not a thing. So my general note here after that and a couple more examples was just really think of consequences. And again, this is a more general note for everyone as well. Think of the consequences of your actions and what your character is doing. You don't want the problem I had with that one fantasy book. You know what I'm talking about, where the kids were in a room with a dead body and they were just like, yeah, it's fine, it's whatever, because that'll pull me right out of your story. But I still want to hit on again, you maybe had one of the most ambitious ideas for any of the stories here, because you were trying to do like a full-on scale battle in a short story, and that, sir, that is a decision to make, and I will pat you on the back and say good standing for the ambition there. The Holy Mother's Light. I have in my prose here good action, and I actually have it sticking out in my head. This one was very good action. It was thought out. It wasn't too indulgent, which many action scenes in fantasy often are. Even some very good fantasy authors are guilty of that. So I would say your action writing is above average, and that's something that many people struggle with. So good on you. And my cons, I had really work on conveying feeling to the reader. I felt like you got you had just some simple word choices that could have really improved the experience for the reader. Try to go for the more drastic language. Straight up open thesaurus.com, put in the word you're going to put, look for some more extreme examples, put that word instead. It sounds shallow and stupid, but oh my God, does it help you as a writer convey more effective emotion if you can't think of the word off the top of your head. Instead of saying he tossed it over, saying he hurled it is so much more dramatic for the reader and lets them really understand the stakes of what's happening. Instead of saying the blood flowed out, you can say the blood gushed. It gushed out. It's dramatic. To wait and see. I said very good at gaining the interest in the beginning, and I liked that. You hooked me really well. This one probably had the best hook at the beginning, maybe in the top 3 of all the stories I read here. I was gripped. You had me by the throat, metaphorically speaking. But you really do need to work on your placement of the reader. You did all this really cool setup. There was a great idea. I really liked your idea. Honestly, it was a great idea. But you needed to go through and add more detail. There were just statements and people talking at a certain point with no descriptions given, no real reactions. So it just felt like I was witnessing 2 computers talking, and then events occurred. And that was never told any consequences of the events, to tell me how the villagers are reacting. Tell me people are, more in detail than what you did, because there was some. But if something as drastic happens in real life as what happened in your story here, why am I avoiding spoilers? When the people started showing up to murder, that shouldn't result in a couple sentences of descriptions. That should result in, oh my God, here's how many people are reacting, and it's horrifying, because big things usually result in a lot of consequence, and you need to think of and convey those to me. That's a bit of a personal preference thing, but I believe a lot of people will agree with that in general. You did get a criticism from someone, though, in the comments of they didn't like your outsider perspective. I really did. I think it was a nice way to set up your character and gave them character in a short story, which is hard to do right away. I can see how someone wouldn't like it, but when you're limited like you are here, I thought that was a cool, creative way to take advantage of the obstacle placed in front of you rather than let it become a hindrance. So you just kind of went with a more shallow characterization, but I feel like it worked and paid off because of how much you're tied down with being limited to only 2,000 words. And we have one that I want to give the award here of best title of any of the stories I read, and that is Death, Sorcery, and Fresh Air. You, sir, you came up with a great title. Death, Sorcery, and Fresh Air. 1, great at setting things up. 2, has a lot of spunk to it. Amazingly strong voice. And you even had a criticism on the side thing, because I got to see everyone's criticisms. People complimenting your voice, and I agree. You have such a strong voice. You went a little bit into the detriment, but I think as a beginning writer, that's just good. I would work on reeling it back, which I think is easier than what a lot of people have to struggle with, which is developing a voice as a writer altogether. You don't have to work on developing a voice. You just need to learn to control it a little bit. But it did end up in some pretty harsh criticism I have later on, but do not take disheart. I want to see more writing from you, absolutely, as with everyone, really. And I think you actually have a strength. You just need to get it under control. You should control it. You had some confusing sentences. I think you could have done with a once-over of editing. And this is going to be some advice I'm giving to literally everyone who did not already do this. Read your short story out loud to yourself. You would be amazed at how many things you catch that I certainly caught because I was reading them out loud. And you should, without question, read your story out loud to yourself, because you'll catch a lot of weird phrasing, weird sentencing, dialogue problems that you won't otherwise. So I recommend you check that out. Just me coming through there. Your fun with writing did lead to some personality overriding believability. I have this note here. Also, formatting the page. This is a personal preference thing. I know some people like to put spaces, like line space between every paragraph. Please, for the love of God and all that is holy, do not do that with me. This isn't me criticizing you. This is just a general announcement for everybody. That drives me nuts. I cannot justify why. I do not know why. But Christ on a crutch, does it bother me? And it's, oh my God, I have that criticism written down for so many people. You also, this comes back to almost like the consequence thing, but this is consequence for setting. You need to really think about where you're placing your story. So if we're in this ship setting and it seemed medieval, people were using swords, you also had phrasing of things like whiz kid. That's a very modern phrase, very modern slang that came about from our direct pop culture. I do not believe that phrasing would have existed in the world you put in. So it just is a very clear textbook example of pulling every reader out of what you established so far. Because things like whiz kid, which is a reference to a thing within our own pop culture, destroys, cancerous, tumorous to the world you're building. So that right there is criticism. Though I still want to reiterate, I loved your damn voice as an author, and you should be proud of it. Then we had one with the shortest title, Faith. Faith. You gotta have faith. All around, I put wow. This is one where I really didn't have much to say because it was just so solid. Most of the things I'm saying here are criticisms, and this one was just technically beautifully written. I found almost no issues at all editing-wise. You had a lot of setup for a short story, and that was kind of a pro and con for me because, one, it made me at the end of it go, I want more. Give me more. But you have the restrictions, so you can't. I loved Faith. This was a very solid entry. If you guys want to see a really good short story that is just all around nice, compact, go to the Discord that KingEditor, I'm sure, will be putting and talking up with people in my Discord about, oh, this has like a little thing. That's a spring. This has a spring in it. These shades are awful. And you can go check that out in the Discord. Go check out Faith. This is really well done. And I think you write at a level where I cannot criticize you on anything technical. I just think maybe if you're in a short story, try to make it the typical story structure of beginning, middle, end. I feel like this is more beginning, middle. And so it left me going, I want more, instead of being like, catharsisized. Filled with catharsis. Nothing new on the Magonaut line. This one I gave the award for most entertaining to read. and by award I mean I put in parentheses next to the notes, it's the most entertaining to read. You had a blast writing this. I can just tell you had fun, and that of course results in me, the reader, having a lot of fun reading it. Oh my gosh, this was a blast to read. You have so much personality to the point where it affected your formatting. You are writing all caps, exclamation points, which a lot of people are going to basically blacklist you for. I don't. You're having fun. It's a short story for me, a doofus to read, so I'm okay with it. But if you're ever sending something off to a publisher, probably don't do that, although Robert Jordan got away with putting flicker repeatedly for like a page, so who knows. You had a what I would describe as beautiful authorial voice, fantastic, and probably the best finisher of any story I've seen here. Yours was a very much so beginning, middle, end, and I think it actually left me with the best feeling of any story at the end. Wowie, wow, 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 wow. Well done. And you actually had a criticism of yourself here at the end, which I think comes down to my only real large criticism of what I read here. You wrote, I intended at first to have three perspectives, Pierre, the priestess, and Colonel Mart, but I kind of got dragged out and things only went downhill from there. Nothing went downhill. This was really solid and I liked it, but you chose to have a battle sequence. And that was, I think, your mistake. I think a lot of people have fun writing battle sequences. I don't blame you. They're fun to write. But in this constrained of a setting, it's eating up valuable time. And when you're trying to craft a narrative within 2,000 words, good luck. Good luck, unless the story can happen within the battle, which is my number one criticism for everyone here who wrote a battle scene. I don't think anyone did this. If you're writing a battle in a short story and you're constricted by words, you need to have the story happen within the battle, not just, oh, clashing, bang, bang. It needs to be a direct consequence here. But this one, oh my gosh, so much fun. The Suicide Doctor. Very interesting idea. This one was probably the most like outside the box idea I came across here, and hats off, metaphorical hats off to you there for that. Loads of character given, probably the most, top 3 amount of character given for any short story here, so I appreciate and respect that. Debatably the most solidly written from a technical standpoint. I didn't find many errors at all, so you clearly went through with a fine-tooth comb and did editing. I appreciate that. Thank you. You appreciate my reading your story, so you went through and edited it. And people who didn't edit much, I'm not saying you disrespected me, but you certainly don't appreciate my time. No, I'm kidding. That's fine. And this was more of just a gut criticism. It felt like your story was trying to be a certain thing you had maybe like seen before, and it wasn't necessarily you trying to create something that reflected you. I know that sounds weird, and maybe I'm completely off base, but this felt rather emulatory rather than wholly creative. So I don't know why that came through. And I could just say that about a lot of these stories. A lot of people seem like they were trying to imitate their favorite author, which is fine. That happens. That's fine. But the reason I'm specifically saying it in this story is yours was so technically impressive. I felt like you were punching down under your weight class by going with something that I feel like had maybe been thought of, a style that felt like it was more pulling from other inspirations rather than trying to do something your own. So my biggest criticism here, and this is a good criticism to have, is I want to see you take off a bigger bite. Do something a bit more outside the box. Try to come up with a larger scale thing, and I would like to see that from you. So my biggest criticism is that I'm impressed and I want more. The Last Supper. Very bold title. Unfortunately, I didn't have a ton to say about this one. You have a really nice voice, and it was very well written overall. I wanted more personality, really, was my biggest thing here. Not a whole lot stuck with me because I feel like you were very concerned with getting it technically right without putting much of you in it. And I wanted to see more of the author in the story. But this is one of the most common criticisms I have for even best-selling authors, is that even best-selling authors can sometimes just feel like they're writing a story and not caring about putting some kind of personality or slant into it. And not everyone wants to do that, which is fine. I like seeing it, though, so it's going to be in my criticism. But overall, The Last Supper was well-written, technically fine, and a creative, neat idea. And for the love of God, please stop formatting your stories by having all these unnecessary line breaks. It makes me want to just insert joke. Loving Fangs. Your descriptions were spectacular. Thank you for stellar descriptions. Seriously, those were on a good level right there. I really dug them. Solid writing all around. I really look forward to reading more from you. And for the love of God and all that is holy, please stop formatting your pages with all these unnecessary line breaks. You did it too. But yeah, Loving Fangs was another entry. I'm not gonna lie. Based off the title, I had low expectations for yours because I was expecting for some reason like a corny, bad vampire romance novel or short story. But I got what I really liked. So maybe choose a better title is my largest criticism for you. But you really impressed me and I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. Good job, Loving Fangs. Now see, I have solid writing, good characterization. You actually put relationships in there that I felt were better fleshed out than pretty much anyone else, so thank you for that. You know how I feel about relationships. Was that done on purpose? Because if it was, I'm impressed. Maybe the best technical writing of anything submitted, because I personally did not find one issue at all. You clearly did a lot of editing. I think you had editors like at the bottom, like thank you these people for editing. So thank you for putting that effort in and making it such a clean, concise, beautiful read. Yours as well, I feel like is good enough, as well as a few others I've mentioned before, are like good enough on their own as they stand to go into a book of short stories that could be published. Just saying. My only con for you was your names. I'm dyslexic and your names really, really were not fun for me to try and figure out how to pronounce, so I'm not even going to try to say any of them here. There was one with no title and no author. So if you're the guy who didn't put a title on it, and maybe you did in the Discord and I didn't catch it, but there was no title on the document and no author, this is for you. I feel like you had a really clear writing. It was fun to read. There was personality in your writing. All big bonuses for me. Liked it quite a bit. But the biggest criticism I have, opposite of the last person, loads of technical issues in your writing. Mispunctuation, double spaces, littering it everywhere. Those were some pretty big problems I had. But you had a lot of personality too, which I liked. There was also an issue with not establishing before showing, which you can pull off, but in a short story is specifically hard to do. And this is something that I think a couple other people may have had slightly less of an issue with, but still had an issue with. Someone would display something that is clearly super strength, but because it's a short story, I have no idea about your magic system. This has not been explained to me. And so it just happens, and my first thought is a human can't do that because I'm not in the mindset of expecting this person to have super strength. If you're in a bigger novel, you can have someone just have super strength because usually some form of magic system has been established before this point, so the reader can go, oh, this is a result of the super strength. But if you look at a story like Lord of the Rings, where there's no established super strength, if someone just did that, you'd be like, the hell? And that goes on into here as well. A super strength thing happened, and I was like, why? I need to know why. So in a short story, you need to be kind of blunt. You need to say, like, when someone does something like that, whoever witnesses it, or maybe if you're in the person's head, have a very brief, concise explanation as to why and how this is happening, so it's not jarring. Obviously, super strength is not like the most jarring example. This would be much more of an issue if it was like, and suddenly this person pees fire, then one, go to the doctor, and two, that would be even more of an issue. Tasty Hands, which was the creepiest title, and boy was this story disconcerting. It was about Pips and I. Prose, absolutely hilarious. You made me laugh out loud multiple times. Good descriptions and humor and your humor landed, which I'm impressed by that. Maybe I'm biased, I am, but I was legitimately laughing at times. Well, a well-earned and disturbing and funny ending as well. There was a few technical issues with the writing, needs some editing. I would say this is one that I would put in front of an editor and go, mark the mistakes, please. It felt like it was written in one pass through. It felt like you sat down and you wrote it. And with the concept of what the story is, I have a suspicion that's true, though I'm not blaming you. It was still a load of fun to read. And the other con I'm going to put here is I cannot look at Pips the same for the next few days. I'm going to be looking at him a bit funny. A-I-D-O-L. I'm going to say Adel. I put in parentheses here, best in show, because apparently this is like a dog show or something. It was a complete story, full beginning, middle, end arc, which I adored. I really appreciated that. Thank you for putting the time and effort to have a complete arc that felt like I actually felt filled with catharsis. I was like, oh, I read a story there. It was a short story that was a story, and I appreciate that immensely. Your formatting made me want to run over people on the sidewalk, but, the line spaces thing, people are going to do it. Apparently, I'm the only one who doesn't like it. You needed some minor editing for some technical problems. Always be aware of what the reader knows. Similar issue we were talking about before, where sometimes the reader didn't know something and characters were saying like, oh, he knows what these is. And I'm like, I'm sitting here like, what? But besides from that, This is marvelous. Yeah, so as a result of the reader not knowing the proper things, there were some world details that were unclear to me. But overall, very well done. I dig it. And the final story of today, The Many Bodies of Ben Trenton. Very well technically written. I think this is another one that is arguably the best technically written. I don't think it needs to be put in front of an editor. This could be put in a book as now sits, and I think the quality that was displayed is up there as well. This could just be put in a series of short stories collaboration and published, and you'd be fine. I even have specifically here, thank you for clearly going through and doing multiple pass-throughs of editing. Much appreciated. Very sharp writing. You had a nice clippy fast pace, which in short stories really helps the story breathe and come to life, and I appreciated that. At no point did I feel like there was any paragraph in your short story that was unnecessary, didn't help things feel better described, more real, place me as the reader in it. Big props there. A neat idea I hadn't really seen in a short story like this before. Another big pro, another big props given to you there. This one, I really do think maybe not the most entertaining for me to read, but I really appreciated everything brought here because it again was just on a level that makes me as someone reviewing it go, oh, I need to sit back and put on my deep review hat, which I'm not going to do right now, but I still really liked. I think from my critical standpoint, not an enjoyment standpoint, this was the best written one here. And I had a con, my only con that I had was I'd like to see more risks taken from you and try to put more of your personality in here, because the only thing I didn't really get from you here was a lot of personality. My general advice for anyone here after reading these would be really think about, as you are writing, the perspective of the person you're sitting in. Think of the perspective you are following. And that's so crucial because it'll lead to you thinking about what the reader knows, what this character knows, what information you have to convey successfully, and don't jump perspectives completely jarringly. If you are doing a third-person omniscient, great, stick with it. But if you're doing a second-person, first-person, what have you, you need to stick within the bounds of that unless you're having a clear moment of consciousness jump, which is what the unnecessary line breaks piss me off so much for, because that's what they're used for. If you're doing a consciousness jump, you then put the line breaks in, but people were just doing it between every paragraph. So I had to, between every paragraph, go, okay, are we with the same person in the same setting? Yes, we are. All right. If you want to work on your personality coming through and an atmosphere, which is something I criticize a lot of people for, please focus a lot more on your sentence structure and word choice, because I read words like running so much when you could have said dashing or sprinting, and those little changes, while they seem insignificant and small and maybe even just shallow, when they add up, they add your character, your personality to the story, and that's so important. Your word choice matters. You know, if you're going to describe a city as beautiful and clean, okay, neat, but if you tell me it's pristine and that builds the world more, it lets me know what's happening. And on the flip side, if you just say it's dirty, that's not nearly as interesting or causing the visuals in my head of you saying it's a grimy, crime-ridden city that felt like every corner hid a dirty criminal secret or something. You know, that's just off the top of my head. It's bad, but you know what I'm saying. Please, for the next round, always at least take one editing pass through your work. This was evident that several people did not. The best thing you can do is sit there and read it out loud yourself and follow exactly what you put on the page, because that will help result in you catching so many issues that you put down. And my last bit of advice that applies to probably about 50 to 70% of people, really think about, would these words come out of a person's mouth? Because there were multiple sentences I read where I just went, no. Someone would not say that in this situation. If people are dying around you, you're not going to look to your friend to the right and be like, how's the day going? Obviously, nothing was that bad, but there were things that were like, clearly the thought process the character was going through didn't match the setting and situation they're in. So really think about positioning your character, what they're thinking about, what they're feeling, and that, again, will help deliver stakes so much better. But that is my final thoughts on your all short stories. I appreciate it so much. I'm going to remove the shades that are slowly but surely giving me a headache and say good job. I was really impressed overall. I went into this with moderate expectations, but I was really, in general, very impressed by everybody. So good job. And King Editor, I'm hoping you're ready for a lot more people participating in the next one if you're going to try to do it again, because we are going to have a lot more. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe. A link to the Discord down below if you want to join the community, as well as the subreddit, my Patreon, all that fun stuff. And have a good one, y'all. Peace.